Hi everyone. So now we are discussing the new session on compilers, that is session number 4. So the topic that I'm going to explain in this session starts with input buffering. So just to brief, currently we are learning lexical analysis chapter, and the task of lexical analysis is to read your input program from left to right, scan the input characters and identify set of tokens to which those particular lexemes belong to. So just to brief, what is a pattern? Pattern is a set of rules which helps us in identifying tokens. What is a lexeme? Lexeme is the set of input characters that you will find in your input program, and those have to be categorized into set of tokens. So lexeme is what exactly you find in your source program. In the last session I explained a simple example of relational operators, less than, equal to, greater than and greater than, equal to. So these particular operators were lexemes, and all of them were belonging to a category of relational operators. So all this less than, equal to, all these were categorized into token called relational operator. So pattern is a set of rules which helps us in identifying to which category or which token a particular lexeme belongs to, right? So that's all we learned in the last session, and now we are going to understand how this token identification is implemented internally. So there is a technique that is used called input buffering. Okay, so input buffering is the technique that is used. So on this screen I have one buffer which is divided into two halves. You can see a big space here that's separating my two buffers. So there is a line in between. Okay, there is a line in between separating these two halves. Okay, so in the first half of the buffer I have all these characters till asterisk, and in the second half of the buffer my text starts with C followed by all these characters and ending with a colon. Okay, so this is the first half and this is the second half. Now also we have two pointers here. One is called lexeme beginning and second pointer is called a forward pointer. Okay, so these are the data structures that I use in input buffering. One is lexeme beginning pointer and second is forward pointer. Okay, so there are times when the lexical analyzer needs to look ahead several characters beyond the lexeme for a pattern before a match can be announced. Okay, so lexical analyzer uses the patterns, uses the set of rules to identify to which token a particular lexeme belongs to. Right, so lexical analyzer have to keep on scanning the input characters. It has to keep on scanning the characters in a lexeme till a token is announced. So continuously lexical analyzer matches the lexeme characters with the pattern till a particular token is announced. So the point that I need to make over here is you need to keep on scanning it. So the point that I am planning to make here is the lexical analyzer may sometimes need to look ahead several characters beyond the lexeme for a pattern to be matched and a token to be announced. So it's not only the one next character that it needs to see, but it needs to keep on scanning the input characters till a particular token is announced. Okay, so it's not just next character from the current pointer, but series of characters it has to match. Like for example, yesterday we had seen const. In the previous session we saw const, right? Const was a lexeme. So const is made up of how many characters? C-O-N-S-T, 5 characters. So only after all 5 characters are matched with a pattern, I can declare it as a constant token, right? So that's what I am planning to say here, that lexical analyzer needs to look ahead several characters beyond the lexeme to match it with a particular pattern before a token is announced. Okay, and to reduce the amount of overhead required to process an input character, we use a buffer that is divided into two n character halves. So in this buffer that I have on my screen, let's consider that I'm dividing this buffer into two halves, two n character buffer halves. So the first half buffer is till this asterisk, and there is a line here, and second buffer half starts from character C till end. So I divide this buffer into two halves. This is one buffer and this is buffer number 2. Each buffer is made up of up to n characters. Okay. So EOF that I see here on my screen, this EOF marks the end of the source file. It is end of file. Okay. So this EOF marks the end of the source file. Two pointers to the input buffers are maintained. So what are the two pointers those are maintained for input buffer? One is lexeme beginning and second is forward. Initially, both the pointers point to the first character of the next lexeme to be found. So initially, both these pointers point to a next character where the lexeme finding is involved. Okay, both are pointing to the first character of the next lexeme to be found. One pointer is called a forward pointer, as we see on the screen. It scans ahead until a match for a pattern is found. So we keep on moving the forward pointer character by character till a particular token is identified, till a particular pattern is matched. Only when a particular pattern is matched, we can declare a lexeme as a token. Okay. So once the next lexeme is determined, the forward pointer is set to the character at its right end. So we keep on moving forward point. Initially when we start finding all this, both the pointers are pointing to a single character, that is the start of the lexeme. Then we keep on incrementing forward pointer till a particular pattern rule is matched. As soon as a pattern rule is matched, that means we are successful in categorizing this lexeme as a token. Then we move both the pointers to the right end of the lexeme, because we have already categorized this current lexeme into a token. So both these pointers are moved to the right end of the lexeme so that we can start searching for the next lexeme. Clear? After the lexeme is processed, both the pointers set to the character immediately past the lexeme so that we can start finding of the next lexeme. If the forward pointer is about to move past of the halfway mark, the right half is filled with n input characters. So we use two buffer halves here, right? As soon as the forward pointer reaches the end of the first half of the buffer, the second half of the buffer is loaded with new n input characters. Similarly, when the forward pointer reaches to the end of the second half of the buffer, the first half of the buffer is filled with new input characters. Clear? So when the forward pointer reaches the end of the first half, the second half of the buffer is filled in with the new input characters. Similarly, when the forward pointer reaches end of the second half, the first half buffer is loaded with input characters. Okay. So if the forward pointer is about to move past the right end of the buffer, as I have said, the left half is filled with the input characters, and the forward pointer wraps around to the beginning of the buffer. So we keep on doing such processing. So I have a small algorithm here which explains what I have said just now. So let us discuss this. If the forward pointer is at the end of the first half of the buffer, then reload the second half with a new input data, and you increment the forward pointer so that forward pointer will point to the starting character of the next half of the buffer. Okay, so if the forward pointer is pointing to the end of the first half of the buffer, reload the second half. So we are loading the second half with new input data and we are incrementing a forward pointer. That means forward pointer will now point to the first character of the second half of the buffer. Similarly, if the forward is pointing to the end of the second half of the buffer, then we load the first half with new input characters, and we move the forward pointer to the beginning of the first half. Simple, right? If the forward pointer is is currently pointing to the end of the second half of the buffer, we reload the first half with the new input characters and we move the forward pointer to the beginning of the first half, because that is the next that we need to continue processing with. Else, meaning forward pointer is neither pointing to the first half of the buffer nor it is pointing to the second half of the buffer. That means forward pointer is lying in between the buffer. In that case, just increment the forward pointer. Is that clear? So if the forward pointer is pointing to the end of the first half, we reload the second half of the buffer and we make forward pointer pointing to the first character of the second half of the buffer. If forward pointer is pointing to the end of the second half of the buffer, we load the first half of the buffer with new data and we make forward pointer pointing to first character of the first half of the buffer. Else, if the forward pointer is lying somewhere in between the buffer, just increment the forward pointer. Simple. This way keep on processing the input characters till all lexemes are converted into respective tokens. Clear? Now we will move on to a new concept called sentinels. So in the previous algorithm that we just explained just now, what happens here? What is the drawback of this? Except at the end of the buffer halves, the above code requires two tests to be performed before we increment the forward pointer, right? So every time before we increment the forward pointer, there are two tests which needs to be performed. One test is check whether forward is pointing to end of first half. Second test is check if forward is pointing to end of second half. And if it is not pointing, we increment. That means when the forward pointer is lying somewhere in between the buffer, you have to simply waste our time and efforts in testing these two conditions. Suppose a buffer is 1000 characters long, then 1000 times this forward pointer will be within the buffer. So with this code, we are just wasting our time in checking whether that forward pointer is pointing to end of the buffer. Here we are checking whether it is pointing to end of first half. Here we are checking whether it is end of second half. So 1000 times we will be simply checking this, even though we know that pointer is pointing to some character inside the buffer itself, with an example of 1000 length buffer. So 1000 times we will be simply testing these two conditions, even though we know that forward pointer is not going to satisfy any of this condition because pointer is lying in between the buffer, right? So only in 1000th time, only that particular time, one of these condition will match, whether a pointer points to end of first half or second half. But other than that, both these conditions will be false because buffer is 1000 long and 1000 times forward pointer is going to be within the buffer itself. So simply we are wasting time here by testing. Before incrementing the forward pointer, we are testing unnecessarily. So how to overcome this drawback? We overcome this drawback by using sentinels. Now what is a sentinel? Sentinel is a special character that cannot be part of your source program. Sentinel is a special character that cannot be part of your source program. So in this example, EOF is used as a sentinel character. So we can reduce the two tests in the previous algorithm to one test if we extend each buffer half to hold a sentinel character at the end. So the logic that we use is we include a new character called a sentinel character and we include that at the end of the buffer. So the two tests that we were performing in the previous algorithm, we are reducing the cost by doing only one test now. The algorithm just have to test for a sentinel character and need not have to check whether a forward pointer is point to the first half, second half for moving a forward pointer, I mean. Okay. So we introduce a sentinel character. What is a sentinel character? It's a special character that cannot be in your source program. So we include that sentinel character at the end of each buffer half. I repeat, we include the sentinel character at the end of buffer halves so that the tests can be reduced. So the sentinel is a special character, as I have said, that cannot be part of your source program. So we are not getting into a corruption of your lexemes. Because your source program is as it is, we are introducing a new character which cannot be part of your source program, and we are including this new special character at the end of buffer halves. So in this example that I have on my screen, I am using EOF as a sentinel character. Okay. So I'll explain to you all this program. So earlier we saw that just to move the forward pointer, we were doing two tests, right? So now I don't do that. I increment the forward pointer right away here, and then I check is forward pointer is equal to EOF. Now in this example I am using EOF, that is end of file character, as a sentinel character. Okay, the buffering is exactly the same. I still have same buffer divided into two halves. Each buffer is of n characters, and now one additional step that I have done is I have included EOF as a sentinel character as the end of the buffer. Okay, so I check is forward pointer pointing to EOF. If it is pointing to EOF, okay, then I enter inside. So where exactly this EOF can come? EOF can come at three places. Since I am using EOF as a sentinel character, it can come as at the end of the first half of the buffer. It can come at the end of the second half of the buffer, and it can also come in between the buffer if it's the end of your actual program file. Alright. So since I am using EOF as a sentinel character, it can come at end of the first half, it can come at end of the second half of the buffer, and third place where it can come is where your actual program file is ended, end of file. It will be in between the buffer maybe. It can also come at the end if your program has exactly got over at the end of respective buffer. Okay, so these are the three places where EOF can come: end of first half, end of second half, or when the actual program ends, right? So only if forward pointer is pointing to EOF, then enter inside, else you blindly keep on incrementing forward pointer. Now let's take the same example of our assumption, where let's consider that the buffer is of 1000 characters long. So if your program has not ended, then for 1000 times you can keep on directly incrementing forward pointer even without going inside if. Correct? Let's consider that your buffer is of 1000 characters. Your EOF will be only at the end of the buffer, right? Or when your actual program file ends. So till your program file ends, or till you encounter the end of the first half or end of the second half, you keep on incrementing forward pointers blindly. So we are saving on the time, we are saving on the tests, right? So we keep on incrementing forward pointer and we stop blindly incrementing it till we encounter forward pointer pointing to EOF. So what are the three cases where forward pointer can point to EOF? When forward pointer points to end of first half, forward pointer pointing to end of second half, and forward pointer is actually pointing to actual end of file, actual end of program. So until unless all these three conditions are met, all these three use cases are met, it will keep on incrementing forward pointer, right? So if forward pointer is EOF, then I enter inside. So now we know that one of the three use cases are it. Now I am checking whether is forward pointer is the end of first half. If forward pointer is pointing to end of first half, then we reload the second half and increment the forward pointer. That means I load the second half with the new data and I make forward pointer pointing to first character of the second half of the buffer. Else, if forward pointer is pointing to end of second half, then we load the first half of the buffer with the new data and we move the forward pointer pointing to beginning of first half, so that the processing can be continued. Else, that means EOF is found somewhere in between the buffer. That means actual program has been completed. That's why we terminate the lexical analysis. Simple. So as I have said, the EOF can come at three different points: end of first half, end of second half, because it's a sentinel character that we have introduced, or when your actual program has got over. So until and unless those three use cases are met, forward will never point to UAF. So in those cases, just blindly keep on incrementing forward pointer as you analyze. So if forward is pointing to UAF, then these are the three cases which I have just explained. So if forward is pointing to end of first half, you load the second half of the buffer and you increment the forward pointer, so that forward pointer is pointing to first character of the next buffer that we have just loaded. Else if forward is pointing to end of second half, that means the second half buffer processing is complete. So we load the first half with a new data and we move forward pointing to beginning of the first half, so that it can start processing the characters from the newly loaded first half buffer that you have loaded. Else, that means UAF is found somewhere in beginning of the buffer, meaning your actual program is done. So you terminate the lexical analysis. Okay. So this is how we have improved the input buffering algorithm by including a sentinel character. So now we are going to discuss the next topic, that is regular expressions. So before we dive into regular expressions, we need to know what an alphabet is. So alphabet is nothing but it's a finite set of symbols. I repeat, alphabet is a finite set of symbols. So I can give you all an example that alphabet is represented by a sigma, which can contain letters from A to Z. So capital A, capital B, capital C till capital Z. So all these are one of the example of an alphabet. Okay, so it's a finite set of symbols. The next terminology that you need to know is string. String is nothing but it's a finite sequence of symbols drawn from the alphabet. So alphabet are each individual characters and string is made up of characters. So suppose I have a word called hello. Now this hello word, you can consider it as a string which is made up of symbols HELLO. So HELLO are symbols combining together forms a string called hello. So string is nothing but it's a sequence of symbols which are drawn from alphabet. So hello is a good example of a string where HELLO are symbols from alphabet. Okay. The another superset of string is now language. Language is a set of strings over fixed set of alphabet. So are you all getting the correlation? At the lowest level I have an alphabet, which is a finite set of symbols. Then I have a superset called a string. What is a string? It's sequence of symbols. And what is a language? It's sequence of, or it's a set of strings. So I'm going superset wise. So alphabet is a finite set of symbols. String is a finite sequence of symbols. And language is a set of strings. Okay. So those are the important terminologies that you need to know in this subject. Then I have the convention shown here for regular expressions. Asterisk is, whenever I write asterisk while writing a regular expression, it means it is 0 or more. Asterisk means 0 or more times you repeat the expression to which I apply asterisk on. Plus is 1 or more. Asterisk is 0 or more times you repeat, plus is 1 or more times you repeat. Question mark is 0 or 1 only. So whatever expression to which I have applied question mark, repeat it 0 times or just 1 time. Okay. So suppose R and S are different regular expressions denoting languages LR and LS. So what is LR? LR is a language generated from regular expression R. That means it is a set of all strings which are generated by permutation and combination of regular expression R. Similarly, LS is a language generated from regular expression S. That means it is a set of strings which are generated from all permutation and combination of regular expression S. So suppose you write regular expression R or regular expression S, then the language that is going to be resulting from this regular expression ORing is language generated by R union language generated by S. The reason being, we are writing regular expression R or regular expression S. So first, since I have regular expression R, the language generated will be all set of strings generated by different permutation combinations of using R. LS is language generated by a set of strings by using different permutation combinations of regular expression S. So I am saying my target language is either R or S. That means I want set of strings which are all generated from language of R plus language of S. That's why it's union. So language generated by R or S is all strings generated by R plus all string generated by S is also included. That's why it is LR union LS. When I have concatenation, regular expression R to that you concatenate S, that means the language that I am expecting from the target expression is LR followed by LS. Because the order is important. I want R, to that you concatenate S. That means the language generated by target expression is LR and to that you concatenate LS. The next example is R asterisk. What is asterisk? 0 or more. So the final language generated by this particular regular expression is LR and to that you apply asterisk. And if I have a R, what is the language depicted by R? LR. So these are the simple examples of what will be my target languages if I use ORing, concatenation, asterisk, and if I just have a plain regular expression. Okay. Then we'll move on to what we mean by a regular definitions. So we may wish to give names to the regular expressions and to define regular expressions using these names as if they were the symbols. So I'll give you a simple example here. Now letter is a name given to this particular regular expression. Now what this regular expression indicates? Capital A or capital B or capital C, keep on doing till capital Z, or small a or small b or small c, keep on doing till small z. So this particular regular expression says you can either have a capital B or a capital A or B or C or till Z, or small a small b till small z. So you can have any of these characters. So I am assigning a letter as a name to this particular regular expression. So that is what a regular definition is. Then I have a digit as another name given to another regular expression. What is this regular expression saying? 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 till 9. So you can use any of these digits as part of this regular expression. And to that I am giving a name called a digit. Okay. So now if you just notice carefully here and correlate this to my definition of regular definitions, what am I saying? We may wish to give names to regular expressions. Have we done that? Yes. Where? We have given names to regular expressions. We have given names to regular expressions. And to define the new regular expressions by using these names as if they were symbols. So this is the regular expression number 3. What am I saying here? Letter followed by letter or digits. What this asterisk means? Asterisk means I can repeat this what's in the bracket 0 or more times. So this, what exactly is there in this bracket? It says letter or digit. And this entire thing I am applying asterisk on. That means letter or digit, you can keep on repeating this 0 or more times. I repeat, letter or digit, keep on repeating this 0 or more times. So what's the final language that you get from this regular expression? Letter followed by letter or digits. If I repeat this 0 times, that means there is nothing here, so it will be letter. If I repeat this once, then it can be letter or a digit, and you can keep on repeating 0 or more times. So the final language is letter followed by letter or digits. So if you just notice carefully here in this regular expression, I am using the names which I have given to regular expressions. So letter is a name given to this regular expression, digit is a name given to this regular expression. So regular definition is, we can give names to regular expressions and we can define regular expressions using these names as if those were symbols. So from this example, which are symbols? A, B, Z, A, B, Z, 0, 1, 9. All these are symbols. So my regular definition says I can use the names given to these regular expressions as if those were symbols. So I'm using letter, digit here as if those are symbols, but those are not symbols. Those are names given to regular expressions. So whereas A till Z, 0 to 9 are symbols, but letter and digit are names given to symbols. And over here I'm using these names given to symbols, okay, name given to regular expressions as if those are symbols. So A to Z, 0 to 9 are symbols, but letter and digit are names given to the regular expressions. But here I am using these names given to regular expressions as if those are symbols. That's what a regular definition means. We may wish to give names to regular expressions and define regular expressions using these names as if those were symbols. That's what a regular definition is all about. Okay. Now we'll learn what a transition diagram is. Okay. What exactly we mean by a transition diagram? So transition diagram is a diagram which is made up of two important components. One is a state and one is an age. I repeat, one is a state and one is a age. So in this example, how many states do we have? From state 0, I go till state 8. So that means there are total 9 states in this diagram. There are edges connecting different states. All these are edges connecting different states. Okay. Whichever states which I have marked with double circles are called final states. Whichever states which I have marked with double circles are called final states. This arc that I have marked for the very first state is called a starting state. Whenever you will see arc coming from nowhere to a particular state, it means this state is a starting state. Double circles means final states. So let's try to understand what I am trying to explain with this diagram. This is a starting state. 0 is a starting state because it has arc coming in here from nowhere, right? So 0 is a starting state. What am I doing now? If I get less than sign in the input as the input character, I go to state number 1. If the next input character is equal to sign, I go to state number 2. So when I reach from state 0 to state 2, what are the input characters that I found? Less than equal to. So from state 0, I keep on scanning the input characters. If I get less than, I go to state 1. If the next character is equal to, I go to state 2. So to reach from state 0 to state 2, I have to get less than equal to as a sign in input, right? So less than equal to, so I reach state 2. So So less than equal to is a sign. So LE stands for less than equal to. So I am returning to the parser that whatever lexeme that I have found less than equal to belongs to a relational operator, relop. So relop is the token for less than equal to lexeme. And what is the attribute value that I am passing? LE. LE stands for less than equal to. Clear? So less than equal to, these two characters that I have found are nothing but lexemes, because those are exactly found in your program the way it is. So less than equal to is a lexeme. If you find less than equal to, return to the parser that this less than equal to belongs to a token relop and pass a attribute LE. Attribute needs to be passed because parser needs to know among relational operators which one of this is what we have found out, because there are different relational operators, less than, equal to, greater than, equal to, not equal to. So all these are different relational operators. So lexical analyzer will find that all these relational operators will boil down to a token called relop. But how will parser know, which is the next phase of compiler, how will the parser know that which of the relational operator is lexical analyzer giving to it? For that we have to pass an attribute. So when less than equal to lexeme is found, the lexical analyzer returns to a parser saying it is relop token and it is LE. LE stands for less than equal to. While parsing the input, suppose I get a less than sign followed by a greater than sign, it means it is not equal to. So I return to a parser saying it is a relop token and not equal to is the attribute. Suppose I get a less than sign and some other sign which is not defined in this particular diagram. So if I get a less than and some other character I get, then I go to state number 4. So if I find any other character other than any of this defined, that means there is some other character following this less than sign, correct? So if I get something other, I return to the parser saying this is a relational operator and it's a less than. And then small asterisk here. This asterisk means I don't want the next character or the other character that I found to be reported as part of less than sign. Hence this asterisk means move the forward pointer one location left. This asterisk that I marked to the circle means move your forward pointer one location left. That means don't consider that character as a input to this particular token. Okay, because I'll give you a simple example. If someone writes A is less than B in your high level program, after I get less than, the next character that's going to be following less than is B, right? But I don't want that B here, because we are just returning the token for less than sign. That's why I'm moving that pointer one location left. That's why the asterisk I have marked. And I'm returning relop as a token for less than sign. And it belongs to less than. So less than is the attribute, LT. If I get an equal to right from the start, then I return this is also belonging to relational operator token and EQ is the attribute. From the start sign, suppose I get an equal to followed by greater, equal to followed by, from the starting symbol, if I get a greater than sign followed by an equal to sign, that means the token is relop and what's the sign? Greater than equal to. Suppose I get a greater than sign and some other character. I'll give a simple example of this. If someone types A is greater than B, after greater than sign, B will be the next character. So I don't want B to be considered as relational operator. That's why I mark this state with an asterisk. That means move the pointer one location left. Don't consider B as the correct character for greater than relational operator, right? So since I marked asterisk, move pointer one location left here. That means skip this other character. So greater than is again a relop and GT is the attribute. Clear? So I'll explain to you all again this transition diagram. Transition diagram that I've drawn here is to identify the token relational operator. Now relational operator, when we say, there are different possible lexemes that come under this category. Less than equal to, not equal to, greater than equal to. So all these different relational operators come inside a category of relational operators. So all these that I have named just now are the lexemes, but all these belong to a category of token called relational operator. So in this diagram, let's see how lexical analyzer parses the input to identify that these lexemes belong to relational operator token. Since there are different lexemes and all this boils down to single token called relational operator, lexical analyzer have to give to the parser also additional information saying which lexeme am I processing, because all this boils down to a token called relational operator. So if the lexical analyzer directly tells to parser saying I have identified relational operator, the parser won't know which of these lexemes you have identified. Hence, lexical analyzer, along with giving a token relational operator, it should also provide additional information called attribute, and that attribute is all that I have written here in my diagram. LE, NE, LT, GE, all these are examples of attribute values which lexical analyzer passes to parser so that it can give additional information as to which lexeme I have found. Okay, so let's start. Transition diagram is made up of two components, state and an age. So in this, whichever state which gets a arc coming in from nowhere is called a starting state. Whichever state where I have marked double circles are final states. So 5, 2, 3, 4, 7 and 8 are final states. So let's try to discuss this. When the lexical analyzer processes the input characters, if it finds that it gets a less than sign, it goes to state 1. If the next character is equal to, that means it returns to the parser saying less than equal to is a relop token and it is LE, meaning less than equal to. After getting less than, if the next character is greater than sign, that means lexical analyzer tells parser that less than greater than combination is nothing but a relop token and it is not equal to. After less than sign, if some other character only comes up, then there is an asterisk mark to this state. That means move your pointer one location left. That means skip this particular extraneous character, and this less than what it has found out, return to the parser that it is a relop token and it's a less than. From the starting state, if the lexical analyzer identifies as equal to sign in the input character, return to the parser saying it's a relop and it's equal to sign. From the starting state, if the lexical analyzer finds a greater than sign, go to state 6. If the next character is equal to, that means lexical analyzer has found that the lexeme greater than equal to has been encountered. So return to the parser saying greater than equal to belongs to token relop and it's greater than equal to G. If lexical analyzer finds greater than sign followed by some other extraneous character, then I have marked this state with asterisk. That means move your pointer one location left. As good as saying skip this character and tell to the parser that I have found out greater than relop token, which is GT, greater than. So is that clear? So now we are going to learn the lex tool. This is nothing but it's a tool to construct lexical analyzers based on regular expressions. So now we know what a regular expression is. Now we know what a transition diagram is. So this is the best time to learn what's a lex tool is. Lex tool is a tool to generate lexical analysis. We have to give to the lex tool the input of regular expressions, and it will generate to us the lexical analyzers. Okay. So now let's discuss more about lex tool, which is a tool to generate lexical analyzers. So we can construct lexical analyzers based on the regular expressions. So lex tool is widely used to specify lexical analyzers. Using regular expressions, we can specify the token patterns. So input specification have to be provided into a lex language. A language is called lex. So here, if you just notice this diagram that I have here, you have to write one lex source program wherein you need to specify different regular expressions there. And lex tool will automatically will give you lexical analyzer, to which you can feed in the input program, input high level program, and the lex tool will directly give you the different tokens which were found in your high level program. Simple. We have to first write the lex program using a lex tool. So lex.l is a program that is written to generate lexical analyzers, which will be full of your regular expressions, patterns, and then that input program for lex will convert that into a tool which will be a lexical analyzer. To your lexical analyzer, you have to give a high level program, and it will automatically will identify tokens in your high level program. Great, no? So let's see how to write a program in a lex language so that you can generate lexical analyzers. Okay. So this diagram that I have here, you need to write a lex source program, and the name of that is going to be lex.l. So this have to be given input to lexical compiler, lex compiler, which will generate lex.yy.c. So your input program is lex.l, which is full of regular expressions and full of patterns, and this particular input program is given as input to lex compiler, which will generate a C program called lex.yy.c. This lex.yy.c have to be given to C compiler, and it will generate a.out. Now your a.out is your lexical analyzer. Now to this a.out, you can give your high level input program, and it will automatically will give you sequence of tokens. Simple. So these are the three simple steps in which I have shown how to write a lexical analyzer. You can write a lexical analyzer using a tool called lex tool. Now in order to write the lexical analyzer, first you have to write one program in the lex language. So the program in lex language is fully made up of regular expressions and patterns. So you have to write one program in lex language giving all your patterns and regular expressions, and that is given as input to lex compiler, which generates lex.yy.c. Now this C program which your lex compiler generates is given to C compiler to generate a.out. Now a.out is your actual lexical analyzer. I repeat, a.out is your actual lexical analyzer. Now to this lexical analyzer, I give my input high level program, and it automatically finds the sequence of tokens in my high level program. Clear? So now we have to focus on how to write the lex program. So lex program consists of three parts. So this lex program that we need to write consists of three parts. One is declarations, second is translation rules, and third is auxiliary procedures. So first is declaration, second is translation rules, third is auxiliary procedures. So declarations are nothing but your regular expressions. Now D1 gives R1. R1 is a regular expression to which I give a name called D1. So it's a regular definitions. We have just seen what a regular definition is, right? What is a regular definition? It's the one in which I can give names to the regular expressions, and I can also include these names into further regular expressions as if those were symbols. So these are regular definitions that comes in declarations. In translation rules, you can just specify different patterns and say if a particular pattern is matched, what action to take. So in translation rules, you define all the rules wherein you say that if a particular pattern is matched, what is the action that lexical analyzer needs to take upon matching a pattern. And auxiliary procedures are other support procedures which are helping you in identifying the tokens and giving the required information to the parsers. Okay. So now let's write one program in Lex. Let's write a lexical analyzer to get a feel of it. So this is the requirements that is being given to us, and we are supposed to write a lexical analyzer for this. Now what are the expectations from our lexical analyzer? It should identify the white space. It should identify if, then, else. It should identify the identifiers, it should identify a number, and it should identify all the relational operators. Simple program. This is the input given to us, saying we have to write a lexical analyzer using a lex tool which needs to identify all these tokens. It should identify if, then, else, identifier, number, and relational operators. It should identify all this. Okay, so let's see how to write. So how many parts do a Lex program have? 3 parts. What are those? Declarations, translation rules, and auxiliary procedures. Correct? Declaration rules, translation rules, and auxiliary procedures. So now let's write a program to identify all these tokens using these 3 parts of your Lex program. What's the extension of the Lex program? .l, right? So in this diagram that we had seen, this is the lexical program that we are writing now, lex.l. So first is the declarations. So let's write the declarations. So declarations, as I have said, are nothing but regular definitions, right? See this. Declarations are regular definitions. So these are some of the manifest constants that I have mentioned here. What are these all standing for? LT means less than. LE means less than, equal to. Then comes equal to, not equal to, greater than equal to, if, then, else, ID, number, and relop. So there are different manifest constants that I have listed here, which I'll be using now. Then I have regular definitions, which we already know what it is, right? So I'll explain to you each of the regular definitions. One is delimiter. So if I encounter a tab or a /n, then I consider it as a delimiter. /n is a new line character. /t is the tab. So if I get tab or a new line character, I'll consider it as a delimiter. What is a white space? White space is delimiter plus. When I had explained conventions of regular expressions, I had explained 3 things. Asterisk, which is 0 or more, plus, which is 1 or more, question mark, which is 0 or 1. So now can you all tell me what this white space means? White space means 1 or more delimiters. What is a delimiter? Tab or a /n. So white space is 1 or more delimiter. What a letter is? Letter is capital A to capital Z or small a to small z. So it can be either capital A to capital Z or small a to small z. Any of the characters will be letter from this set. What is the digit? 0 to 9. What is the ID? ID is the identifier. How am I defining it here? Letter followed by letter or digits. So it is letter, pipe sign is for ORing. Letter or digit, entire thing asterisk, meaning repeat this bracket 0 or more times. And letter followed by this expression. So letter followed by letter or digits. The next is the number. So I am saying one or more digits followed by, there is a dot, and this is optional because it can be an integer number or a floating point number. Integer number don't have a dot. That's why this particular thing is option. There is a question mark. Question mark saying this bracket is 0 or 1s. If the number is integer, this bracket is repeated 0 times. That means it is just one or more digits is a number. But if it is a floating point number, this bracket is repeated once. So it is one or more digits followed by dot one or more digits. Similarly, you can represent a number in exponential form. That's why again this bracket, I put a question mark after this bracket. That means this bracket, whatever it is, have to be executed 0 or 1s. So if it is an exponential number, you can write e followed by plus or minus one or more digits. Okay. Then comes the translation rules. Now what is the translation rule? Translation rule means if a pattern is matched, perform a particular action. So in this, let's see what exactly are the translation rules for this example. If a white space pattern is matched, where is white space pattern defined? Here. Now here white space pattern is defined, right? So if a white space pattern is matched, no action and no return. Because in my previous session I had explained that lexical analyzer skips your white spaces. So lexical analyzer removes the blanks and white spaces because there is no point in identifying them as a tokens. Right? So if it is a white space found, then no action and no return. If is found, then return if as a token. If then is found, then return then. If else is found, return else. Now all this capitalized stuff is the manifest constants. Those are actual tokens, which we had seen in the table. So all these are tokens, right? Your lexical program needs to identify this token. That's why these are the ones which you need to return back. So if else is found, return else. If id is found, id is an identifier which will be actually inside the symbol table. That's why we are returning id and we are calling install id. Now install id is a auxiliary procedure. There are three parts to Lex program: declarations, translation rules and auxiliary procedures. So right now we are discussing translation rules, which in turn is calling an auxiliary procedure. It's like a support procedure which is doing some task. Okay, so what is this install id doing? Install id is a procedure to install the lexeme whose first character is pointed by YY text and whose length is YY length into a symbol table and return a pointer thereto. So what install id will do is, it will, whatever is the value for this id, it will install that into the symbol table for you and it will return the pointer to that entry. So I'll explain YY text and YY length later, but right now just remember that install id will install the value for this id into the symbol table for you and it will return the pointer to that. Clear? Install num. If a number is found, install num. That means install a number, value of the number inside a symbol table and return a pointer to that to you and return number as a token. If any of this is found, less than, equal to, not equal to, greater than, equal to, if any of this thing is found, then return a token as relop and YY val is going to be the attribute values which I have mentioned in transition diagrams. So for less than sign, YY L val will be LT. For this sign it will be less than, equal to, not equal to, greater than, equal to respectively. So YY L val is the actual value and this return is nothing but the token. So here I am explaining the different terms that I had used earlier. One is install ID. Install ID is auxiliary procedure, which is a procedure to install the lexeme whose first character is pointed by YY text. So instead of explaining install ID and install num now, I'll explain YY text and YY length first. So YY text is nothing but it's a pointer to the beginning of a lexeme. Suppose else is a lexeme, ELES, else is a lexeme. Then YY text will point to character E, because E is the first character in else. Similarly, if for example if is a token, let's take an example of another token, say num, or let's consider then. Okay, let's consider then. So YY text will point to T. So YY text points to the first character of a lexeme in a particular token. So for a token then, YY text will point to T. For a token else, YY text will point to E. Is that clear? So YY text points to the lexeme beginning, the first character of the lexeme. YY length is the length of a lexeme. It will tell you how long the lexeme is. So YY text is pointing to the first character of a lexeme. YY length is the length of the lexeme. Simple. So install ID is a procedure to install the lexeme whose first character is pointed by YY text, because YY text points to beginning of lexeme, and whose length is stored in YY length. So this is saved into symbol table, and a pointer to that is returned back. So install ID will just install a lexeme whose first character is pointed by YY text and whose length is YY length. So it installs this information into symbol table and it returns the pointer to that. Install num is exactly same as install ID, just that it processes numbers. It saves numbers. So install num will save a number into the symbol table and it will return pointer to that. So install ID, I repeat, is a procedure to install the lexeme in a symbol table whose information is present in YY text, which is the start of lexeme, and YY length, which is the length of the lexeme, and it returns pointer to that, what is saved in the symbol table. And install num is exactly same like install ID, just that we are saving a number. Clear? So in my next session on compilers, we are going to learn finite automata. It's very interesting and lots to learn here. Thank you.